Hey everyone, and welcome. I am absolutely thrilled you're joining me for this explainer today. We are going to be diving into a remarkably dense, incredibly pivotal 12-year period in India's modern history. We're looking at a time when the fight for independence really reached a boiling point and two very different paths to freedom basically emerged at the exact same time. On one hand, you had the path of mass, nonviolent movement, and on the other, the path of calculated, highly ideological armed resistance. We're going to unpack exactly how these movements took shape, who is driving them, and why they matter so much to the broader historical picture.
We've got a lot of ground to cover, so here is a quick roadmap for our explainer. 1. The catalyst of 1919. 2. The non-cooperation movement begins. 3. The rise of the revolutionaries. 4. Avenging Lala Lajpat Rai. 5. The Central Assembly bombing. And finally, 6. Trial, ideology, and legacy.
Section 1. The catalyst of 1919. Okay, let's dive into this, because to really understand the massive movements of the 1920s, we absolutely have to start with the shared national trauma that kicked the whole thing off. 1919 was, well, it was a brutal year. The British passed the Oppressive Rowlatt Act, which was essentially this black law designed to suppress basic rights and revolutionary activities by allowing arrests without a trial. Naturally, the protests against this led directly to the horrific Jallianwala Bagh massacre in April 1919, where innocent, unarmed people were gunned down. Right around that exact same time, the Khilafat movement kicked off, protesting the treatment of Turkey after World War I. So you have all of this immense frustration and anger just building and building until it finally culminated in August 1920, when a massive nationwide response was officially launched.
Section 2. Non-cooperation movement begins. So moving into 1920, the nation saw its first major, unified response against British rule, a mass nonviolent movement that literally reached every corner of the country. Millions of Indians united under three very clear, very distinct objectives. First up, the movement demanded justice for the victims of the Jallianwala Bagh massacre. Second, it demanded justice for the Caliphate movement. And ultimately, the grandest goal of them all was the attainment of Swaraj, or self-rule. These three pillars brought together an unprecedented number of people from completely different walks of life.
The sheer scale of this is absolutely crucial to understand. On August 1, 1920, the non-cooperation movement officially began, and it was the very first true mass movement, pulling in people from all over the country. And to support what was honestly a massive logistical effort, they established the Tilak Swaraj Fund. This was huge because it allowed ordinary, everyday citizens to financially contribute to the fight for freedom. It was a total game-changer for public participation.
Section 3. Rise of the Revolutionaries. Now, while the mass non-cooperation movement was catching fire, another sentiment was brewing among some of the youth who felt that mere non-violence just wasn't going to cut it. Enter a young Bhagat Singh.
To understand this pivot, you really have to look at the personal impact of that 1919 trauma. I mean, imagine being 12 years old. That's how old Bhagat Singh was when the Jallianwala Bagh massacre happened. He actually walked 30 kilometers from his school to the site of the massacre. He collected the blood-soaked soil in a small glass vial, took it all the way home, and his family offered flowers to it. It really just goes to show how deeply, on a profoundly visceral level, this specific event shaped him.
And that conviction, it only grew stronger. By the time he was 16, his family was trying to push him into marriage. But instead of settling down, he packed up and left home, leaving behind a letter to his father. I want to read this quote for you because it's pretty incredible. He wrote, "My life has been dedicated to the highest objective, the freedom of India. Therefore, there's no place for worldly desires." He completely dedicated his entire existence to the cause, eventually moving to Kanpur to work in revolutionary circles under a fake name.
You see, these young revolutionaries were actually deeply intellectual. They were well-read in global revolutions and socialism, and they operated on this fascinating concept called the higher religion. This was basically the belief that true faith isn't about your traditional religious rituals, it's about absolute dedication to the nation and to public welfare. Anything that didn't serve the welfare of the people, they considered it secondary. So they weren't just acting out of anger, they were driven by a very profound, well-studied ideology.
Section 4. Avenging Lala Lajpat Rai. Let's see how this ideology actually translates into direct retaliation as the British suppression gets even heavier in the late 1920s.
Things escalated rapidly here. In October 1928, the all-white Simon Commission arrived in Lahore, and senior leader Lala Lajpat Rai led a peaceful protest against it. But the British response was just brutal. The police superintendent ordered a lathi charge, and Lala Lajpat Rai was severely beaten. Tragically, he died from his injuries the very next month in November. Well, the revolutionaries were absolutely enraged. They demanded retaliation for the death of their leader. So exactly 1 month later, in December 1928, Bhagat Singh, Rajguru, and their allies executed a plot to assassinate the police chief. But in a wild case of mistaken identity, they ended up assassinating Officer John Saunders instead.
Section 5. The Central Assembly Bombing, which brings us to the real climax of their direct action. And surprisingly, it wasn't an assassination at all, but a highly calculated public protest on April 8, 1929.
So Bhagat Singh and Batukeshwar Dutt literally walked right into the Central Assembly in Delhi and threw bombs. Now this brings up a massive question, and I want to pose this directly to you. Why bomb the Central Assembly? What were their true motives if they knew for a fact that doing this would lead to their certain arrest?
The answer lies in what was happening inside that building. The government was trying to force through two deeply oppressive pieces of legislation. You had the Public Safety Bill, which allowed for arrest without a trial or even a case, and then you had the Trade Dispute Bill, which outright banned laborers and workers from going on strike. Bhagat Singh was a massive supporter of workers' rights, so they bombed the assembly to protest these specific bills. They were fighting for civil liberties and the working class, plain and simple.
Their true intention was brilliant, honestly. When they threw those bombs, they specifically aimed for the empty benches. They used low-intensity explosives that were just designed to create a bunch of smoke and noise, not to actually kill anyone. As they threw them, they scattered leaflets with this exact quote, which was inspired by a French revolutionary. "It takes a loud noise to make the deaf hear." The bombs were literally a physical protest against a deaf, unresponsive government. And the craziest part, after throwing them, they didn't run away. They stood their ground, shouted slogans, and willingly handed themselves over to the police.
Section 6. Trial, Ideology, and Legacy. Now, Bhagat Singh and his comrades knew exactly what they were doing when they surrendered. They used their arrest and the highly publicized trial that followed as a massive platform to spread their message to the entire nation.
Take the famous slogan they popularized in the courtroom, one you still hear all the time today, "Inqilab Zindabad," or "Long live the revolution." Critics back then totally misunderstood this as just a call for mindless violence. But Bhagat Singh actually wrote a brilliant defense to a publication called the Modern Review to set the record straight. For them, Inqilab Zindabad was not just about bombs and armed rebellion. It was a call for complete systemic change, to end the exploitation of man by man, and to build an equal socialist society. And their fight literally continued behind bars. 81. That is the staggering number of days Bhagat Singh fasted during a brutal hunger strike in Lahore. Just think about that for a second. 81 days. Why would they do that? Because the British were treating political prisoners appallingly. Bhagat Singh and his comrades went on strike to demand basic human rights, things like reading materials, proper clothing, and decent food. They argued they were political prisoners, not common criminals. And despite forced feeding and extreme torture, they held their ground. Tragically, their comrade Jatin Das died after 63 days of fasting, which is what finally forced the British to back down and make concessions.
Eventually, as the trial for the Saunders assassination concluded, Bhagat Singh, Rajguru, and Sukhdev were sentenced to hang. A lot of people tried to save them, including Bhagat Singh's own father, who actually filed a mercy petition to the tribunal. Well, when Bhagat Singh found out about that, he was furious. He wrote a very stern letter to his dad, stating, "My life is not so precious that it should be saved at the cost of my principles." It was a highly calculated, ideological choice. He knew that by embracing martyrdom, without even flinching, he would ignite a fire in the youth of India that the British could never, ever put out.
And that brings us to the tragic, yet undeniably powerful end. On March 23, 1931, Bhagat Singh, Rajguru, and Sukhdev were executed in Lahore Central Jail. They were actually supposed to be hanged on the 24th, but the British government, this mighty global empire, was so terrified of the massive crowds gathering for these three young men that they secretly moved the execution up by 12 hours. Reports say the three revolutionaries walked to the gallows smiling, and they completely refused to wear the traditional black hoods.
Which leaves us with this final, profound question. We've just looked at the bombs, the assassinations, the mass movements, and all the courtroom drama. But when you reflect on this 12-year history we just explored, I really want you to think about this. Did the true power of these revolutionaries lie in their weapons, or did it actually lie in their ideas? It was their capacity to read, to write, to organize, and to willingly sacrifice themselves for a larger ideological vision that truly shook the empire to its absolute core. Thank you so much for joining me on this explainer. Keep learning, keep questioning, and I will see you next time.